There's always been a rhythm to hoops, a creative freedom contained within a tangible rhyme and reason. The ball already knows where it wants to go. The great ones just let it move through them. You see it when a dynamic dribbling artist goes to work, or when a flashy playmaker ignites the crowd with a glitzy dime. It's jazz, it's hip-hop, it's soul, and it's rock and roll all rolled up into one. It's a canvas, a creative outlet for a unique kind of artist to paint a portrait with a bouncing ball and a hoop. Today we're seeing it brought to life in genre-bending edits that revive the memories of nuanced stars and one-of-a-kind icons. From Westbrook edits that make your eyes sting, to Grayson Allen tributes that remind you why you love to hate him. The community's taken that rhythm and fine-tuned it to tell a story. It's always been there though, lingering in the background for patrons of the game to pick up on, and passing fans to miss. For a long time, it spoke faintly in the brief, anticipatory silences that awaited something fantastic, the collective gasp that had to precede the collective roar. But while we were focused on ascending empires and emerging challengers, we were missing the intangible spark, the je ne sais quoi of it all. Not what made the league great, or what made competition compelling, but what made basketball beautiful. Grasping at evocative highlights and holding tightly to iconic moments. And then it happened. A couple of oddly brand mixtapes that sounded as underground as they looked found the rhythm and played it for the world.
And I think with And One, being able to show basketball in a different light, and not only just street ball, but they're playing inside gyms, but doing the same moves that they were doing, on the concrete outside. Just all the players playing so free and being so expressive on the court was such a different take on basketball to me. And that's why I and many others gravitated towards it, because, in NBA, you only had a few players kind of doing that.
The And One mixtapes were a shock to the system, a disruptive jolt that woke everybody up. It wasn't about 50-point performances or title-winning plays. It was about the substance of style, the artistic expression ranked only by the level of its aesthetic achievement. It wasn't just a basketball tape, it was a cultural artifact.
You felt closer to those players on the And One tour compared to the NBA, because not everyone in the NBA is like tall, they can dunk and all that. Not saying that they weren't doing that on And One, because they were, but it just felt like that kind of play style was more attainable, to the average, kid that was watching.
It started with magnetic stars like Rafer Alston, whose jaw-dropping crossovers and no-look passes defined a new era of basketball. Hot Sauce, who taught us that we knew nothing of the limits of dribbling. And the Professor, who showed us all the dazzling results of bold experiments. Players who followed the rhythm, daring to turn basketball into art. And One wasn't just a temporary phenomenon, it was a landmark moment. The hidden rhythm of basketball was no longer reduced to fleeting moments, it became the main event.
It made me see basketball in a way where it's not just a sport, it's more of an art form. And it made me feel like I was actually there, and watching these mixtapes made me feel like I was a part of that moment in time. Even if I watch them now, I feel like I could still resonate with my content.
The tapes spread like wildfire, passed around at basketball camps and clinics, showing a different version of the game that no one had seen before.
I think there's a traditional structure to the way that basketball is regularly played, and you really saw something different with And One mixtapes, because they focused on street ball. People were just expressing themselves, trying different moves.
It was new, it was authentic, and people couldn't get enough. It was more than a sport now, it was a culture, and these branded mixtapes wouldn't be its only export for long. Eventually, those kids at basketball camps grew up, and they weren't about to let the rhythm die. With the rise of Ball is Life and Hoop Mixtape, we saw a new wave of aspiring creatives, ready to build on the foundations that were given to them by those underground mixtapes. It was a new medium, tributes to regional icons that used the court as their stage. And One laid out the blueprint. Now anybody with a camera and an eye for talent and an ear for music could find a local muse and realize a vision. Digital tools made it possible, but passion made it thrive.
These newer mixtapes that you see of high school players, very fast, a lot more clips and shots of different crossovers, dunks. It really is just the pace, because it makes you really get into the video and you don't want to take your eyes off or you might miss a shot.
High school mixtapes did more than showcase the stars. They democratized the game. They turned small-town gyms and local tournaments into global stages, where any player could be seen. Any creator could tell a story. Talent didn't need sold-out arenas. It just needed a storyteller. We saw crime-stopping superheroes that put restless cities to sleep with logic-defying displays of quickness and burst. Inner-city ball-handling wizards that single-handedly dismantled traps and disintegrated presses. Any acrobatic attackers that turned packed crowds into rowdy frenzies. The people's heroes and their greatest feats were being replayed, slowed down, and cut together over smooth instrumental and soulful beats.
I can still hear the music that they're playing in the video in my head. And the funny part about it is that, Hoop Mixtape all his life, they would always use beats, but it's just crazy how years later, I can still hear those, it's still ingrained in my memory.
The culture was growing. It was no longer confined within basketball camps and AAU tournaments. It was out there for the world to see as often as they wanted to. The list of You Have to See It videos kept growing, from John Wall to Seventh Woods and Derrick Rose to Zion Williamson. Before you knew it, everybody had a favorite mixtape.
I would say my personal favorite is the Austin Rivers Hoop Mixtape.
My favorite high school basketball mixtape of all time would have to be Lonzo Ball.
There's this LaMelo Ball mixtape. It's called The Ankle Bully.
It had taken a life of its own, and it wouldn't take long for another shift to take it to the next level.
Respect to Overtime because they show me love all the time. But I would say they definitely changed mixtape culture, because when I first discovered Overtime, they were just posting highlights of high school games with no music in the back. And I remember specifically when I would see those kind of videos, I would think to myself, what happened to the music? What happened to the mixtape, era, I guess you can say, because this was years after.
The people had spoken. They wanted more. It factors, perfectly framed highlights, and a steady stream of viral content. And an Atlanta-based media company was ready to deliver. The suits and ties smelled blood in the water. Mixtapes were a culture, but cultures made way for markets. Overtime took that culture's raw energy and wrapped it in sleek, marketable packaging. You couldn't argue with the numbers. It was profitable and widespread, but something was lost along the way. What started as a celebration of basketball's rhythm became a production line. The soulful storytelling and emotional weight of mixtapes were replaced with bite-sized clips, designed to grab attention and drive engagement. It wasn't about the beauty of the game anymore. It was about the numbers. Clicks, likes, and views. Social media brought the promise of accessibility, but Overtime turned that promise into a business model. They gave us Mikey Williams, Jalen Green, and the Thompson twins, but not as players. They became brands. Market-researched products meant to drive interest and push sales. Their stories weren't crafted to capture the rhythm of the game, but to fuel algorithms and sponsorship deals. Highlights became hooks, and players became influencers before they became athletes.
There are some good parts to that, like showing the ins and outs of the game that the average viewer might not necessarily get to see. I can see how there's a downside to it. Too many cameras, you're focusing on the glitz and the glam and the in-betweens of the game instead of focusing on the basketball being played.
The art form that once highlighted the spirit of the game was now just another piece of content on a scrolling feed. The sobering reality of what awaits any cultural movement that ascends from the depths of niche to widespread commodification. Free-flowing creativity replaced by methodically planned and collaboratively executed hype. It wasn't about the essence or the soul. The interest in bringing the music from the background to the forefront had been replaced by a relentless drive for market capitalization. It looked like the unfortunate but predictable end of the beautiful movement in the profit-centered world of corporate America. The rhythm born on the playgrounds and captured on the mixtapes had gone silent. And then, on an app known for trendy dances and short-form skits, it roared back, blasted from the rooftops by quiet creatives that only wanted to rekindle what they felt when they were first introduced to the world of mixtapes.
I can just sit here and create something so important to so many different people. You can create positivity through just a simple edit.
It didn't happen overnight. At first, it was a handful of prototypical basketball edits, with harmonious beats and dynamic clips that elicited warm memories of mixtapes past. They were beautiful homages, and then they evolved. Paramore, Radiohead, and those same iconic hip-hop masterpieces, this was new and old at the same time. The final realization of an idea that had been roughly proposed by those orange-clad VHS tapes decades ago.
I knew I wanted to tell niche stories revolving around the NBA and its players, and the best way to do that was through song selection. I listen to a lot of music, so oftentimes I'll get different ideas by listening to different songs, and I'll immediately think of certain players and then just jot it down.
It was the music that's been waiting to be transcribed, the individual notes plucked out of graceful finger rolls and innovative combos, sewn together into a perfect symphony that brought joy to your ears and tears to your eyes. Art artwork that used modern musical overtures to frame that age-old beat that was born the moment the first basketball was bounced, like Kanye searching the bins for an Otis Redding track. You can hear the echoes of DJ Revolution's Volume 1 introduction in every thoughtfully created TikTok edit you're fortunate enough to run into on your timeline. There aren't always stories immortalized with statues or banners, but they're stories that meant something. Stories that mattered at the time, relate to us in a way that reminds us of what it felt like when they did. The echoes of a past generation and the voice of a current one. The culture forming stories with the soundtracks they've always deserved.
Two of my big passions in life are basketball and music. I felt like, it could be fun to put those two passions of mine together and make some, basketball edits. I didn't have storage on my phone at the time, so I was like, I can just post them on TikTok. It's this app that everyone's talking about, so I post them on TikTok and have them live on there. And I had no idea about, this community of people that made edits, that enjoyed edits. I say this all the time, but I was really fine with nobody watching.
We don't know what'll happen with that app and the decision in DC, but regardless of what ensues, these storytellers and this movement will persist. You'll still see those edits, those musically driven narratives carefully crafted and tirelessly polished. It's our job to keep giving them the support they deserve on whatever app they choose to keep cooking. We'll continue to crown champions and anoint legends, but while we spend 9 months of the year focused on singular stories and all-time rankings, pursuing the sublime with the mundane and the essential within the entirety, it's not an artist's job to show us something new, only to show us where we were supposed to be looking the whole time, to bring the hidden moments to the forefront. The culture survives for as long as we keep it alive, as long as we reinforce what matters, reward what's exceptional, and give back to anything that gives to us. There's always been a rhythm to hoops. Now we just get to hear it. So let's thank the people who played it for us and keep the music alive.
I can care less about the following. I can care less about likes. Those are just numbers on the screen. I really just want to use my platform to be positive and really let people know that, your dreams are possible. And, whatever you want to do it. Just start. Once you start gaining a little traction, just take it as far as you can.